Under a moonless sky, I found myself wandering down a deserted lane with a haunting chill in the air. It was one of those nights when even the crickets seemed to hold their breath and the wind howled like a mournful spirit. My destination, the infamous Dollmaker's workshop, a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred. A silhouette against the starless sky, the workshop stood like a crooked old man, its weathered walls casting long, twisted shadows. As I approached, the stench of old wood, dust, and something unnamably sinister filled my nostrils. Each creaking step on the wooden porch seemed to echo through the cold night, amplifying the eerie ambience. With a trembling hand, I pushed open the heavy door, and it groaned in protest, unleashing a musty gust of air that seemed to come from the depths of forgotten time. The workshop was a labyrinth of shelves, each lined with rows upon rows of dolls. Their glassy eyes stared at me, their porcelain faces frozen in expressions of eternal joy or perpetual sorrow. In the center of the room, a solitary figure hunched over a workbench, his head bowed low, his form concealed by the dim light of a flickering candle. As I drew closer, I noticed the intricate detail of each doll, their tiny clothes meticulously sewn, their hair painstakingly styled. It was evident that the dollmaker was a master of his craft, but there was something unsettling about his creations, something that sent shivers down my spine. The dollmaker seemed oblivious to my presence, his gnarled hands moving with practiced precision. The rhythmic tap of his hammer against the wood echoed through the workshop, creating an unsettling symphony. The longer I watched him, the more I felt a sense of unease, a growing suspicion that there was more to this place than met the eye. Suddenly, the dollmaker lifted his head and our eyes met. His face was as pale as the moonlight, his eyes as dark as the abyss, and they seemed to bore into my very soul. A cold shiver ran down my spine as he stood up, his tall, lanky frame casting an ominous shadow. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice raspy and hollow, like the whisper of the grave. I stumbled over my words, unable to tear my gaze from his piercing eyes. I'm just curious about your dolls," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The dollmaker smiled, a thin, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They are my children," he said, his voice dripping with an unnatural affection. "Each one crafted with love and care." I couldn't help but notice the strange way he phrased his words, as if the dolls were more than just inanimate objects. I felt a growing sense of unease, an intuition that something was terribly wrong. How do you make them?" I asked, my voice trembling. The dollmaker leaned in close, his breath cold and clammy on my face. "I use only the finest materials," he whispered, his gaze intense and unwavering. "The finest human materials." A wave of horror washed over me as the realization struck me. The dolls were not merely crafted, they were created from the remains of the living. The dollmaker was a monster, a twisted artist who used human life as his medium. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the workshop. The dollmaker lunged forward, his long skeletal fingers reaching for me. I screamed and fled, the sound of his laughter echoing behind me as I ran into the cold night. I never looked back, but I could feel his eyes on me, searing my flesh, branding me with the memory of that horrifying night. The dollmaker's workshop was forever etched into my mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of everyday life.